Freedom of expression. You hear that phrase all the time, right? But what does it actually mean, especially right here in the Philippines? Well, it's so much more than just being able to say what you want. It's really the bedrock of a democracy. So let's get into it and unpack what that really looks like.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The Philippine Supreme Court, in a major ruling, put it this way. Think about that for a second. It's not just another freedom on a long list. It's the one that pretty much makes all the other ones possible. And that right there, that's our starting point for this whole discussion.
So here's how we're going to break it all down today. First, we'll dig into the foundation, the why behind this right. Then, we'll look at just how broad it really is. It's more than just words. After that, we'll talk about the limits, because yes, there are limits. Then we'll see how courts do this tricky balancing act. And finally, we'll jump into the free speech fights happening right now.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. In the Philippines, freedom of expression isn't just a nice to have. No way. It's considered a core principle, a fundamental part of the entire constitutional system.
And this is the key thing to get. The Constitution puts freedom of expression on a pedestal. It's what's known as a preferred right. That means it often gets priority over other freedoms, like economic ones. And this isn't random. It comes from really tough lessons in history, both political and legal. The idea is simple. If you can't speak and think freely, pretty much all your other rights are in danger.
Now, when we say expression, you might just be thinking about talking or writing, but the legal reality is so much bigger. This right covers a massive range of ways we communicate our thoughts and ideas.
Just look at this list. Of course, it covers spoken and written words, the obvious stuff, but it also protects things you do, symbolic acts like wearing an armband to make a statement. It covers peaceful protests, marches, art, books, movies. Basically, if you're trying to get a message across, chances are it's protected. But check this out. Here's a twist you might not expect. The same right that gives you the freedom to speak your mind also gives you the freedom not to. That's right. Freedom of expression absolutely includes the right to just be quiet, to not say something you don't believe.
Okay, but, and this is a huge but, this right isn't a blank check. It is not absolute. There are very specific, legally recognized situations where the government can and does draw a line. And the law splits these limits into two big categories. First, you've got content-based rules. This is when the government targets the message itself, what you're actually saying. These are met with strict scrutiny, which is the toughest legal test there is. The government's case is basically presumed to be wrong from the get-go. Then you have content-neutral rules. These don't care what you say, but how, when, or where you say it, like needing a permit for a rally. This gets a slightly easier test called intermediate scrutiny.
And this gives you a perfect idea of what kind of speech falls outside of that constitutional protection. We're talking about stuff like libel, obscenity, or speech that's designed to start a fight or immediate violence, what the courts call fighting words, and of course, direct threats to national security. These are the areas where the right to speak freely has to take a backseat to public safety and order.
So how in the world do judges figure this out? When is a limit okay and when is it not? Well, it's not a simple checklist. It's this incredibly complex balancing act. Imagine a judge on a high wire. On one side, you have this massive fundamental right to free expression. On the other side, you have a legitimate public concern, like national security. The court's job is to walk that wire, carefully weighing both sides without letting either one come crashing down.
And to walk that wire, judges have a toolkit of legal tests. For those content-based rules, they often pull out the clear and present danger test. Is the speech going to cause a serious problem, like right now? When two different rights clash, they use a balancing of interests test. And if a law is written so broadly that it ends up punishing perfectly legal speech, they can strike it down with the overbreadth doctrine.
Let's look closer at one of those. For the content-neutral rules, the time, place, and manner stuff, courts use what's called the O'Brien test. You can think of it as a four-part checklist. 1. Does the government even have the power to do this? 2. Is there a really important reason for it? 3. Is that reason actually about something other than just shutting people up? And 4. Is this the most limited way to achieve the goal? A law has to get a yes on all 4 to be considered constitutional. Okay, let's connect all of this legal theory to what's happening right now. How does all this play out in the Philippines today, especially in our crazy, hyper-connected digital world?
A huge battleground right now is red tagging, and this is major. In a landmark 2024 decision, the Supreme Court didn't just call it name-calling. They officially recognized it as a grave threat to a person's life, liberty, and security. That's a powerful statement about how damaging certain kinds of speech can be in the real world.
And this red tagging issue didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's part of a bigger story. Think back to 2012, when the Cybercrime Act brought the old crime of libel into the internet age. Then in 2020, the Anti-Terrorism Act sparked a massive debate over its vague language and whether it could be used to silence critics. And now, the 2024 red tagging ruling is the latest chapter in this ongoing story.
So, what's the bottom line from all these recent court battles? A few big things. One, the courts are constantly trying to balance a free press with their own need to function independently. Two, criticizing public officials about their jobs is protected speech, unless you can prove it was done with actual malice. Three, social media is now officially seen as its own category of speech that can be regulated. And finally, and this is huge, the Supreme Court has actually pushed back on the Anti-Terrorism Act, striking down parts of it for being just too broad and vague.
And that brings us to what's next. The basic ideas of free expression have been around for centuries, but the challenges, they are brand new. With technology like AI and deep fakes getting better every day, we're forced to ask a really tough question. What new lines will we have to draw to protect both our freedom and the truth itself? That's a question we are all going to have to answer together.